In this episode, we are discussing all things COVID, vaccines, lockdown, anti-masks protests, conspiracies, as well as our common fears and hopes. Kelly Moy is our guest. Kelly works in the coronary care unit in the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast, which is a specialist ward where they take care of patients presenting with various cardiac issues. They carry out various cardiac procedures there, and their unit pioneered and now runs a nurse-led primary PCI service. We had the pleasure to listen to her views and very wise commentary on issues related to COVID. Also, Kasia was with us. Welcome. Welcome to Scraps of Reason, and our today guest is Kelly Moy, who is a nurse. She's working in a coronary care unit in the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast, and she's dealing mostly with patients with cardiac issues. Hello, Kelly. Welcome
Hi.
to our podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's good to have you, and I'm sure you're gonna tell us a lot about not only the situation and the past year, but also about current situation. Kasia was with us as well. Hi, Kasia.
Hello.
Hi, Kasia.
So we are talking today between Gweedore, Belfast, and are you in Belfast? Or
No,
you came home?
I'm actually in Donegal at the minute.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
That's great. So yeah, and Kasia is in Limerick, but so okay. So Kelly's home. Kelly originally is from Donegal. Tell us about your work and when did you start working in Belfast Hospital, and how your career evolved since.
So I work in the coronary care unit in the Royal Hospital in Belfast, shortened down to CCU. So I started there last February, literally the 3rd of February last year. So I was only there about a month before COVID started to accumulate, and things changed very, very quick. Yeah, it was difficult. It was very strange for the first wee while because we were kind of preparing for COVID to hit. So, we were getting PPE, we were learning how to put it on, learning how to take it off, setting up different stations, and kind of having nearly an action plan in place for what we were going to do whenever this happened. So for a while it was like a waiting game. We were kind of just waiting for the storm to hit for a while.
Yeah, it must have been really, really difficult. And I even seen a photo of you, I think, and the full PPE attire. You had the full suit on at some point. It looked a bit, like from some kind of
space.
How was that? Did you ever have to actually wear it after that? After the period of preparations for the storm, as you said?
Yes. What it is, and it's very layered. So it's a full body, like a full suit. Your arms go in. You're tied at the back. You're usually bodied up, so you have a person with you. You put all your gear, and then they kind of help you tie yourself up and cover yourself completely, and then you turn around and kind of help your body get ready. It can be quite time consuming in an emergency situation if you need to get it on quickly.
Yes,
it can be very, very pressurized, and it's very, very warm. I mean, we've been very lucky where we're working at the minute, and that we were never 100% hit with COVID. We kind of my experience with COVID in my area was kind of intermittent. There'd be times where, yes, we would have COVID patients, and then other times we would have none. And then a few other times, though, we would have more COVID patients and then have none. Our patients that were admitted to us would have been admitted, primarily for cardiac reasons, but then would either have had COVID, and needing that cardiac procedure, or have caught COVID in the hospital. So
they were
I understand that there were patients who already had COVID, and then the later stages it affected their heart in some
Yes,
way.
yes,
Yes.
yes, that can
Could you,
happen
could
too.
you,
Yes.
could you elaborate on this for a while?
So where I work, we are, we have a primary PCI service, which basically means that different GP surgeries, different hospitals or ambulance services, if they have an individual with them in their care that they believe is having a heart attack, they can call our emergency line, and one of us will answer the phone and take information regarding that, what's going on with that person, when symptoms started, and they send us through a tracing of their heart, which is an ECG, and then judging on the ECG and that information, we're able to say whether or not we believe the person is having a heart attack. But then, that was just people that we were taking in, from home, from other hospitals. So we then had to ask the question, are there any risks of COVID? Have you any symptoms of COVID? In some cases they did, which was fine. We just took them in and we were extra precautious. There was cases where different, patients from different hospitals would have to be transferred, and they would already have had COVID when they were transferred. So COVID was always, something that just kind of took over how we dealt with things completely.
Okay. So could you tell us about the first case you said? Because you told me it was really scary, because yes, you were getting ready for that for around a month, and then one day the patient came.
So it was actually a man who we had in. I think he was just going for a normal procedure, and he was transferred over from another hospital. And we test any new admission that comes into the hospital, is put into a side room, and whether they have symptoms or not, they're put into a side room and they're tested. And until we know they're negative, we treat everybody as if they have COVID, just to protect ourselves and protect everyone else. So I remember we were waiting on results, and the results had came back, and I remember looking at the screen, and they had come back as positive, and it was our first ever, patient that had COVID. Like, we were waiting for months, and then we have one, and there was a wee bit of panic, a wee bit of oh no,
understandably, yes,
because it's the first time we've ever seen firsthand that this person actually has coronavirus. And until you actually kind of see that someone in front of you has it, it's all you have in your mind is what you've heard and what you've seen on TV and the news and stuff. So it was very, very strange. But fortunately for us at that time, the Nightingale, we have a Nightingale hospital in Belfast where a lot of the patients who had COVID-19 originally were sent there for treatment instead. So they tried to keep all our COVID patients in one area. So then within 24 to 48 hours, he had been transferred. But I remember it was I was very strange when we had our first case. Now we don't really blink an eyelid. It's just something that happens.
I understand, and it seems like it's gonna be happening for a while now. Did you notice a rise of patients with coronary issues after the first cases of COVID were reported? I mean, after the first months, really, as you said, you did deal with patients with cardiac issues related directly to COVID. So were there many cases? How did that look?
Well, originally we had listened to reports from different countries, mainly America, where a lot of patients over there would developed a few months after COVID would have developed chest pain and had gone to hospital, on the basis that they thought they were having a heart attack, but they ended up having a myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart muscle. So they think there's no real study to 100% confirm that they're both related, but there has been a few incidents where people who have what's known as long COVID, it kind of affects them for a few months after, can have this inflammation of the heart muscle. No, we have people come in with myocarditis, endocarditis. We just treat it because it's a normal thing we would see on our unit, So, but I have heard reports from different countries, especially America, where they do believe that it is, completely linked to COVID infection, the inflammation of the heart.
Okay, sure. This is everything ongoing, so we can say definitely, as you mentioned. Okay, so yes, as you said, so your career in the hospital, the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast, began along with the COVID pandemic, and that must have been very strange time for a young nurse like you to begin their career, but also it gives you lots of insight into the whole system. So now, as you know, in the Republic, you will tell us in a minute about the situation and at the north. But in the Republic, in the past few days and weeks, we have a very significant rise. And the National Public Health Emergency Team recently said that this may be the beginning of something. So when we thought that this is actually the end of something and we are coming out of another lockdown, the emergency team NEFT is telling us that this might be a beginning of something. And could you maybe comment on that?
Yeah, I know there has been a lot of talk about, when were we ever, in a wave of COVID, like our surges. They talk about, surges 1, 2, and 3. And this would evidently be our third, wave of COVID. But I think at the beginning, everybody, was waiting for this to happen. And then so when the cases rise significantly, it's like, okay, that now we're definitely in our, in the surge of COVID, and then they'll drop and trickle off, and then they'll rise again, and people will be like, oh no, we're definitely now in the surge of COVID. But I don't think, I personally don't think that there was, a definite pinpoint moment where these surges began and ended. I think it was, the rise in cases, the rise in cases, the way this virus has spread, the way it has, it developed with the way we have developed over the last year, and how we learned about each other. So I think our behaviours as well, and the way that we have approached this virus have, significantly contributed to, when it's going to rise and when it's going to fall.
Okay. So now, because some would say, we have, as per today, I think, is about 540 new cases. So 14 new deaths. And so some people would say, no, there is very visible, significant rise. But you are saying this is actually a more complex issue, and it has to do with varied things, and also with our behavior. So, because some would say, okay, we've been in this lockdown since January. I'm talking about Republic, the Republic of Ireland, obviously. And it doesn't seem to work because instead of noticing a decline of cases, they are reporting a rise. So how would you answer that to those?
I understand. I think lockdown originally was something that was invented to never completely eradicate the virus. It was always kind of designed to help slow it down. And I think the main reason for slowing it down was to protect the health service, to make sure that people who needed that people who needed hospital beds, people who maybe needed ICU beds, such as ventilation for reasons other than COVID, had a bed there if they so needed it. It was to ensure that different services were able to run, in particular mental health services, cardiac counselling, all that sort of thing. It was important, that they were still able to continue at some basic level. Whereas if lockdowns were never happened, then, we don't really know what state our health system would have been in. But I do believe, lockdown has worked. In that regard, it has protected the health system. And other, there's a lot of more negatives, I think, to do with lockdown than there is positives. People have been in lockdown for a year, and it's a lot to ask. And although, the people of Ireland have done a fantastic job, they've, especially younger people, I think need a bit of credit as well for what they have done. Came out of school very abruptly, just their lives are completely changed. Their learning is online now, so they've had to adapt to the way they learn. So there's a lot going on, and for people's own mental health as well. I think there's people who are locked away. They're on their own. They don't have the opportunity to see people face to face. I know myself, when I was in Belfast first, I was in Belfast for about 4 to 5 months on my own. At the beginning of this, I just started a new job, didn't really know anyone, had friends in Belfast, but of course you weren't allowed to see or interact with each other. So I was very much on my own for 4 months, so I understand how, that feels, so I can really empathize with people in that way. But I think lockdown at the minute, I think, this should be our last lockdown. I think it kind of needs to be our last lockdown. I think if there's a surge again, I think they have to look at different ways of, controlling it, different ways of adapting. And this vaccination rollout, I think, is going to be a very pivotal point in all this.
Okay, because yes, what you said here, you mentioned a few things which I would like to address. First thing was that the lockdown, the main reason behind the lockdowns is to protect the health system. And I've been always in conversations with people saying that as, because people wouldn't really connect that directly. They would think it's all about obviously there's so many issues like protection and economic issues, which are like a big depression is going to follow, but we would all think that what we value the most in our life, I mean in a situation of crisis, is our health. Okay, so if there is no smooth running health system, our health is at risk.
Yes.
And up to that point, when we personally face some health problem, we are worrying about other things around us, understandably, like our jobs, income, and the mortgage. But the bottom line is that when we become ill, we want to get to the hospital to get help.
Yes.
And that where I think the lockdown was really needed. And that's where the emphasis should be really put, because yes, I was experiencing, like, my son got sick at some point, and I really wanted to get help, and it was a bit turbulent, but I mean in the end we did get it, because the health system was protected, because there were still some I would say free spaces in the hospital. As you say, if there wasn't a lockdown at any stage, we would probably the hospitals would be so overwhelmed that more people would get affected by it. Those who couldn't get like a direct help in times of need. Even
100%.
for not so serious health issues could lead to serious complications, because if we didn't have an access to hospitals and to healthcare, we could develop really serious illnesses from something that is not very serious. So that's one thing I wanted to address. So yes, and we all really appreciate I hope all of us, the work of people like you. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
There is this, no, thank you. There is this very famous work by Bansky when there's a child who's picking from his toy box a superhero. You know this painting?
Yes, I love that painting. Yes.
Superhero is a nurse.
Yes.
So that's something that we always should have in mind, that you are all doing a great job. Now, the other thing you said, it was about the reopening of society. And one of the questions I got from people on Facebook who are following our podcast is that obviously people are asking when we are going to reopen the society, and if this is the last lockdown or not. And most of the people, I had a little survey there, and whoever was willing to take part. I would like to say thank you to those. And what they said mostly that they think this is not our last lockdown, and you are saying the opposite. You are saying that probably this is our last lockdown. Yes.
Yes, so I'm hoping that it should be our last
Yes.
one. I hope that, I know the vaccination rollout is a wee bit slow, but that's, other issues at manufacturing and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah.
But, I think there's I've heard a lot of reports through the media from different businesses, within society who have nearly openly said that they will not be locking down again. So I think another lockdown after this one would cause a lot more, more issues in regards to striking. We've had anti-lockdown, petitions and marches. We've had anti-mask, petitions. I think, it could go down that road if not dealt with sensitively. I think, there has to be a point where, the government, yes, of course, they want to protect us, protect the health system, which is, completely understandable. But on the other side of that, we have to also think about people's livelihoods and the, ongoing effect that continuous lockdowns are going to have, on that, closing society and then reopening it again. And then the constant closing and opening of society is going to have more implications, I think, than we're in a constant lockdown at the minute, which is fine. Nothing has changed. But I just think that, when they do begin to reopen, they need to make sure that they do it at the right time. And, I think, the kind of plan they seem to have at the minute is to keep us all in lockdown for, they're saying as a ballpoint month, maybe May, the end of May.
Yes.
And then to, in that time, vaccinate as many people as they can, which I think is a good idea. And then have a staged reopening of society. So, if they do it, it's
going to be slow anyway.
Yeah, it needs to be. This reopening has to be very, very slow. It has to be done. It has to be done correctly. And that is down. And I think business owners, they've already adapted their businesses. A lot of them have already adapted the way that they work. So they're willing. I think people will be willing to do whatever they can to make this one work.
Yeah, I understand that. So you mentioned the vaccination program. Could you elaborate on this for us? Because I've got a few questions about that, obviously, because as we know, some people are really concerned. There's lots of people who are eagerly going for the vaccination and they are really impatient and they're waiting to get vaccinated. But even those people, they are still concerned because there's been some contradictory information in the media about the two main vaccines that are the AstraZeneca vaccine and Johnson & Johnson's, which seems to be the favorite in this case. Not only because it's a one shot, but also because of other issues. Could you explain maybe about those vaccines and what's your experience or your knowledge about that is from a personal perspective?
Yeah. So, well, the vaccination I'm fully vaccinated. At the minute, I have both my vaccinations.
Congratulations!
Thank you. I took the Pfizer biotech vaccine, which is 2 shots. So the Pfizer vaccine it's aimed to be about 95% effective after both shots. And along with the Moderna vaccine, that vaccine is made up of messenger RNA or mRNA, as sometimes it's also referred to. So that's basically a technique that delivers a genetic code to your cells. It doesn't change. There's a lot of perceptions about people's concerns regarding, does it change your DNA? Does it change your cells? It cannot. There's nothing that can actually ever change your DNA. It's your DNA. So
this is something that has to be said very clearly.
Yes.
Yes. That's what you said. There's nothing that can change your DNA. And people don't really I've read on it a bit, and I understand the problem because I think people perceive those vaccines and through their view on vaccines from the past. Yeah.
Yes. I know there's been a lot of people that have said, that are anti-vaccine, and people are blaming, COVID and COVID conspiracies for that. But people being anti-vaccine, that, they had their concerns about vaccines way before COVID even began. So this is an issue, a separate issue, I think. Yeah, 100%.
And also these people who are anti-vaccine, they've been vaccinated themselves when they were children.
Yes.
And nobody asked their parents, like, people of my generation. It was just, there was a program, and everybody everyone was taking those vaccines because that was it. And they are all vaccinated, for instance, against polio, or like from my mom's generation, or, and other diseases. And because of those vaccines, we still live. And
yes.
I mean, being anti-vaccine, when you actually took so many vaccines over your lifetime and they protected you, is a bit unwise. Also, the problem with this vaccine is that this is a completely, as you explained, what kind of technique is that behind it. There's a confusion about that, because at the same time, people are perceiving this vaccine in a way, they see it through the way the old vaccines were developed. Yes. So they think putting something into your body that's known, but this vaccine actually works differently. At the same time, thinking of it like of the old vaccines, they are criticizing the fact that this is a very new technique.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There's a contradiction here, because so new, so we don't know how it's gonna work, and it's been developed. Another myth is it has been developed over a very short period of time, which is not the case. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I know there have been concerns, and people have said that they wouldn't take the vaccination because it was developed too quickly, which, I do understand the reservations regarding that. But if you if you imagine how much money and how much time was put into these vaccinations, funding and time that other vaccinations did not receive. Like, for example, you mentioned polio. The polio vaccinations, took a long time to develop because, it was a different era, for one. There was, funding was lower. There was not enough people. When you think of every scientist in the world, they all worked on this. And, I always think about it. I heard a woman say one day on the radio that, she looks at it, as a house. Like, if you wanted your house painted and you had 2 people painting your house, it would take longer. But if you had 20 people painting your house, it would take quicker.
Exactly.
Quicker. So everybody, there's no less knowledge or no less, effort being put into this just because it was done quicker.
This is to do with the revolution of information that we are living through.
Yes.
The past few decades, and we are able to gather and compare much more information over a short period of time. And this is as much as valuable as, because we have internet and because we have means of communicating very fast, we can communicate very fast, exchange thoughts, exchange experiences. Scientists can exchange their knowledge and, the practice and whatever they are working on, and then come to some conclusion. And that's what that's what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, there's massive advances in technology. I mean, even if you take a separate issue such as forensic science, back in the day, there was no such thing as, DNA tracing for fingerprints or anything like that. So if you can even take the developments from forensic science and then, compare them to, the advances in technology regarding, healthcare, advances in vaccination production, it's immense.
Yeah, it's immense, and this is very important thing to say, that and this is also not entirely true that this vaccine was developed so quick, because
I know Yes,
Yeah.
Pfizer,
It
you know,
was
they've been,
finalized, I would say. Sorry, I
yes,
just want to make that distinction, because from what I understood from the articles I read and the people I listened to, some of them were specialists in this field. This kind of vaccine has been, the development of this vaccine started about 10, 20 years ago, like of the model, yeah?
yes,
The
yes,
model of the vaccine. The problem with many of the models and the problem with finalizing the vaccine making was to do with money. And some people who are working, even as small groups, there were lots of small groups of scientists all over the world trying to develop vaccination not for COVID-19, obviously, because this is a very particular virus, but for similar viruses, which you're going to probably explain to us better than I'm trying to do. But you know what I mean? The model
yes,
was there. There
yes,
were no for small groups of scientists, for instance, to finalize it.
yes,
And as you said, when the knowledge came together, it was very quick. It was a matter of gathering funds. And obviously the biggest pharmaceutical companies won again. Unfortunately, there were lots of people working on it for decades,
yes,
even for decades. It's going back to about, I think, 20 years. One of Polish professor mentioned that on a TV program the other day. Yeah, do you agree?
Yes, yes, I know. I think that, yeah, this vaccination has been, you know, especially the RNA type of vaccination that the Pfizer one is, was in production for a long time. They had been looking at SARS, you know, too, which is,
SARS.
you know, SARS, yes, which is part of the COVID-19 infection. So they have been looking at this and developing a vaccination for years, you know, to try and vaccinate against this. They just never needed, before it was never a necessity to have it done quick because there was never a pandemic, you know.
Another thing, I invest money in something that's not going to bring them profit, and as you know, it's understandable that it has to happen before it can be finalized. So you have the prototype, but you know, you need to test it. Okay, so maybe you can tell us about the difference and what you think about those vaccines. And
So the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna one use messenger RNA. So RNA is basically, it's basically, you know, your messenger cells are giving it's bringing messenger DNA to your cells, so your cells are able to recognize, you know, the spike protein. So it allows, you know, a genetic code to be given to your cells. It's like a recipe, if you can imagine a recipe. So your cells are given this recipe on how to develop this spike protein, which is the same spike protein that is attached to COVID-19.
Exactly.
So the protein itself is made up of RNA instructions, and it kind of helps your immune system to detect it, to recognize it, and to deem it as not, you know, as a foreign object in your body, and then it'll start to attack it, and it'll start to build antibodies, you know, to prevent you becoming infected from that. So eventually, you know, the instructions will fade away, but your messenger cells will always remember that spike protein. So if you are to be infected later down the line, you know, your cells will kick in and they'll be like, oh, here, I recognize this. This is not normal. We fought this before, and they will do the exact same thing again.
So you would say this is even safer than the older vaccine, when you were giving basically a shot with the actual disease, which was it was called a sleep. The disease isn't active, but you were giving that to your body. In this case, you have the, as you said, the recipe only is given.
Yes, so literally just the recipe is given to your body. You know, it's instructions. Basically, it's instructions given to your body to help your body fight this. So there's nothing, you know, there's no lesser, more like less dormant, you know, version of COVID-19 being injected into you, as a lot of people, you know, thought.
To make the distinction, dormant. Sorry, I was using the wrong word for it, but you got it anyway. So, yes. So, because I was thinking it should be even more safe when you look at it like that, you are not getting because people are mostly concerned about, you're getting a little bit of disease, even though if it's, I just want to bring it to a very basic level of communication. Okay, you're giving the disease. In the old times, you were giving a wee bit of the dormant disease, and that was the main concern for those who are talking against vaccines, that this foreign body put into you, and that might cause a lot of trouble. And here you're getting the recipe, and the reaction your body reacts is basically your immune system is reacting to this message. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's kind of like it's nearly kind of tricking your body into believing it has COVID, so it starts to respond as if it does have it, and then it makes the antibodies. So when your body is actually then face to face with a potential COVID infection, it knows exactly what to do.
Exactly. This is very important to make that distinction. I think that making that distinction might put some people at ease.
Yes,
that's what I always thought about it. So, okay, so you tell us what vaccines are now available in the Republic, because we are talking mostly about Republic. Obviously, you can tell us about the North if you wish. And yeah.
So the Pfizer one, as we talked about, it was quite, a real prominent vaccine. It was one that was given out quite a lot, especially here in Ireland as well. I think a lot of, the people have got Pfizer. A lot of nursing homes, healthcare within the hospital have been offered the Pfizer vaccine. In relation to community, I think it seems to be more the AstraZeneca vaccine that is being distributed throughout the community. In particular by your own doctor.
Which vaccine did you get? Pfizer, yeah?
Pfizer, yes.
You already said that, yeah. And how did you feel personally?
I felt, I was, like everyone else, I was quite, I had my reservations about it. I was apprehensive.
Yeah.
But it was something that I was going to get despite my own concerns.
Yeah.
My concerns regarding the vaccination was always just, just a general fear in my head. It was more so about my reaction to it, more so than actually, being given it.
Yeah.
But thankfully, like after my first vaccination, my first vaccination was on the 9th of December. And I was fine, just had a sore arm afterwards, which is to be expected. And then I was very lucky, I got my second one 3 weeks afterwards. After my second one, I was fine for a few hours afterwards, but the next day I just didn't feel very well, just kind of general, flu-like symptoms, body aches, headaches, a slight temperature, kind of your kind of standard like COVID symptoms nearly. It just felt very, very kind of not very well for about 48 hours, but it all just passed. But that was just my body's way of telling me that it's responding to what it's been given.
It means that you got the message, your body was tricked into believing, and is showing a reaction, which is good, because you kind of know that when it really comes, it's gonna fight it.
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously, we all have some reservations. I mean, when I was vaccinating my son, every time we were going for a vaccination, I was really nervous, and I was nervous for the next 2 to 3 days after, because each body is different, yes, and you never know how it's gonna react. But that's the nature of science in general and medicine, because it's an experimental science, and we need to know that we learn on the go. And although I was really nervous, I knew I have to do it, because statistically, it shows that it really works, and it's been working for us for decades. So yeah, as you said, you have to go against this fear in your head. This fear is not helpful, because if it's your own body, it might cause additional reaction due to your psychological fear. Yeah, and this is something probably that people also are experiencing. Psychological reactions to the vaccine. What you think?
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, I think so. I think if you if you got the vaccination and then a few hours later you had a headache, and you could have just been having that headache because maybe you were dehydrated, you didn't drink enough that day, maybe you were a wee bit stressed at work, and then your mind will automatically think that that's because of the vaccination that you have that headache.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of psychological issues around it as well. You know, people being a bit paranoid and thinking it's the vaccine that's caused this, you know.
Mm-hmm. So AstraZeneca is the other vaccine. Now, could you comment on the fact that Denmark, Norway, and Iceland temporarily suspended, the vaccination with AstraZeneca? They seem that there is some statistically, it's a small number of cases with blood clots, but those countries decided that they're gonna wait and see. And in the Republic, that's, as you said, we're gonna be giving this vaccination. It's gonna be given to the general population. So do you think that Denmark, Norway, and Iceland are doing it because they have better means and they can get the other vaccine? What is going on just now? Because I'm really lost.
I know. I know. I don't really know, the ins and outs of why it's been. I know they had concerns about blood clots. I don't really know, the nature of who has the blood clots. I think if it's a small number of people, you have to kind of take into consideration, maybe their past medical histories, their own comorbidities. There could be other reasons for developing blood clots.
Yeah.
That might not be linked at all to the vaccination.
Yes.
So it's hard to tell. I think they need to do a proper, study and see how many people are reporting back with blood clots, especially those who are otherwise completely healthy. They're the people that we need to have a look at. But I know that is a concern as well in relation to, I don't think, the FDA, which is our, approval body here for our vaccinations or any new types of medications to be authorized, didn't have any issue with the vaccination. Now, that's still not to say that there's not any issues with it. As the same with any of the vaccinations, we don't really know. We won't know for a few years down the line whether anything, that what the real side effects are. But I'm not really sure. I can't really comment on why, because I don't really know any more information, around it.
Okay, so how the program looks like to you? It is. I think the first two groups were vaccinated in the Republic, 2 or 3 if you include the health workers. How does that look? The timeline.
Yeah, I think it could be a bit quicker, in comparison to a lot of different countries. Even in comparison to Northern Ireland. The vaccination rollout there is fantastic, but I understand as well that the UK are kind of, have their own supply, whereas Ireland is, is in line with every other EU country to get their hands on vaccinations. So I understand.
Sorry for interrupting. So it seems like the Brexit is working well for the UK when it comes to the vaccine.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think in relation to, to getting their hands on vaccinations, I think it seems to be working. From what I have heard, I think, yes, they're able to get their own supply of vaccinations. Okay. Whereas we're all in line, with every other EU country to get vaccinations. So I understand that there is, manufacturing issues as well. And distribution issues, but I think I've seen in the media recent, this past few days, that I don't think our government are too happy with AstraZeneca's distribution, and that they're not meeting targets that they said they were going to meet. So I think there's a wee bit of frustration. So you could maybe see down the line a wee change, in the vaccination that Ireland decide to take. Johnson & Johnson is a real contender now. It started off as something, it started off as a vaccination that was only going to be 65%, and a lot of people thought, well, what's the point in giving out a vaccine that's only 65% effective when you could have a different vaccine that's 95% effective. But I think they have really manufactured, they've really changed Johnson & Johnson, and I think now the actual efficacy of it is quite high. Yes,
so because this is the one shot, and the reason behind the 65% of effectiveness of this vaccine was due to the one shot thing, or
Could be.
Yes, okay, sure. So now we are in a situation that Pfizer was giving in the first stages. You got Pfizer one, and now AstraZeneca is being given to the general population. But you think I will be able to buy Johnson and Johnson's? How does that look?
Yeah, I think so. I think, if our government, at the minute are voicing their frustrations regarding, the vaccination production and distribution, and I think I can just imagine how frustration it is to put in orders for vaccinations and have to wait for manufacturers to distribute them, and then each country is nearly in competition with each other. They're trying to we have 900,000 people vaccinated, and they're trying to get as many people vaccinated as they can, which is understandable enough. So I can imagine that Ireland will be in a position, if they wanted to get other vaccinations on board, to try and speed this up a lot quicker.
Yes, worldwide, I think the countries that are doing best with their vaccination program is Israel, and the other one I think is the Arab Emirates. So it seems that it has to do a lot with money and how the government is doing, how the country is doing financially too. I don't really know what vaccination they are on, but also because Denmark, Norway, and Iceland temporarily suspended AstraZeneca, I'm thinking there's a lot of pressure on AstraZeneca right now, and probably they will have to look for something in its place, or at least temporarily. My mom is 74, and I was expecting her to be vaccinated in March, but it seems like there is some delay in the process. I only spoke to a friend of mine recently, and her mother is in her 80s, and she only got her vaccine. I think she was actually going for the vaccine. It was a week or two ago. So as you say, it should be a bit faster, but there are many factors that are contributing to slow down. Yes, okay. Kasia, do you have any questions at this stage?
Honestly, so far I'm listening, and it's posing more like an informative time for me.
For me as well.
Yes. Yes. So I think I'll keep listening for another while.
Okay, Kelly. So the pressure is on you now. Deliver more information because there's not. I have one question, which is something that's because I came across people like that. Like, do you know anyone from the within the health services who refused to take vaccination?
Yes, I do. There's people, I think, at the beginning who, not really refused, but just decided to hold back a bit. Just to see how things would unfold, see how other people reacted before they made a decision whether they were going to get it themselves. But I think, a lot of those people now are getting the vaccination merely because it's, there's a lot of things in the media at the minute about vaccination passports, and that you'll only be allowed to travel if you've got your you're fully vaccinated. So I think that is kind of driving a lot of people to get vaccinated, not because, they want to, protect themselves against the virus primarily, but because, there's implications for them to be able to travel if they don't.
Yes, I know. I'm just wondering, because I was thinking about this move, and I was thinking, is that to make people, all the current restrictions on travel and the cost of tests back and forth, is it's affecting those who have the smallest income, obviously. But I was thinking, like, isn't that a good way actually to make people to start vaccinate? Because yes, everyone, like, never mind those who have to travel because of life situations or work, but everyone wants to get away eventually, and that might also work on the decision making here.
Yeah, and I think it'll work on the younger population as well. You know,
Okay.
like the younger pop generation, from what I have gathered, are a lot more open, open-minded regarding vaccinations, than people who have lived through a lot more. So I think, like, for younger people, if they're told, yes, you can travel to these places if you're fully vaccinated, I think that'll be a real drive for people to go and get vaccinated.
Yes, what I'm saying, what I noticed is that the young people are, as you say, more open-minded about vaccination, and the oldest generation,
yes,
they don't. The people in the middle, like probably my generation, people in their 40s, sometimes in their 50s, and like mid-30s. I would say these are probably the group who are questioning vaccines in general. I don't know any statistics, I'm just guessing, but I see, like, older people are probably okay with it because, I mean, this comes from their life experience. Yeah, some of them seen polio. I'm going back to polio all the time because it's quite a visual example. Yeah, we all know how did that look, and it was really scary, and it was tragic, and they either lived through that, or they took many vaccinations themselves. They knew people, like, I mean, about the oldest generation I'm talking about now. They either seen people who were affected by particular diseases because they didn't have access to vaccination, and then they've seen the change that vaccination brings into society, or they also took all the vaccines that were recommended at the time of their childhood and youth, and they don't seem to be questioning it as much as the middle age people. Don't you think that's
true?
And the young people all are more aware of the world around them. For them, the technological advance is just something that's the world they live in, so they don't question that because they trust it. And just the people who are in the middle are a little bit confused because I guess they are in between those worlds. I mean, there's lots of because one of the questions I was getting was about the conspiracies.
Yes.
So do you want to comment on, because you already touched upon that a little, but there's lots of them.
There is a lot.
Do you like to say something about that?
I know the conspiracy theories have been widespread during this full pandemic, and conspiracy theories are interesting. They make for interesting reading because, a lot of conspiracy theories, before COVID, actually, a lot of them do tend to make sense. But, like, I think in relation to a conspiracy theory regarding an issue, regarding health, it can pose a great, like, risk to health, and it can really impact on social cohesion as well. I think there was a UK survey I read about a few weeks ago. They done a survey on conspiracy theories, and they found that there was, like, a higher degree of belief in conspiracy theories over COVID-19 than there was associated with people actually adhering to government advice. And then that kind of has a different, it has implications then for testing. If people believe that this is all a hoax, then they're not going to be willing to get tested, and they definitely will not be willing to get a vaccination. But I kind of read into why people believe conspiracy theories, and a lot of it is to do with control. And from that aspect, I understand where people are coming from. If it would be a lot more comforting and a lot easier for all of us to be able to believe that this isn't true, that it's a big hoax, that there's actually no harm to us or to our families. And I understand that that's a comforting, in times where this got really, really heavy. I can understand why that was more of a comforting, thought to lean against than the actual dealing with the actual realities of this.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
And people do believe, if you believe in something and then you find people who have, the same opinions, and then you read things that, kind of make your beliefs almost seem, important, then, of course your beliefs are important regardless. But, if you find something that's able to back up what you're saying and what you believe in that moment in time, it can make the whole thing a lot more real. And I think that's why when people read more and more and more about these conspiracy theories, it becomes information that then is just embedded in their minds.
Yeah, this is the bubble, so called. Yeah, if you are spending some time online and you start to get into a particular kind of information, the algorithm puts you into that bubble and you stay in it. So you don't get views on things. So I'm always aware of that, and I'm always trying to read from both sides. It's not easy because it's like an ocean of information. It's very deep and it's very wide, and you don't know where to pick from, but you need to read opposing views. You can't let the algorithm to keep you in that bubble, because there's a different world out there.
Exactly.
So,
and everything, it's complex, and as people say, I always say, there's two sides to every story, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So it's a very complex issue. And I think then, in relation to COVID-19, I think it does have a lot of implications. Then you see your anti-mask, lockdown protests, when you see the riots in America, in relation to that as well. So, that's when, believing these conspiracy theories can have a real adverse effect on people's health.
Yes, I know. We're only going to find out in the future, like this is just happening in front of us, and we will know exactly how for instance, this as you say, protest affected our health in the future. We don't have the data now, and we just need to wait, unfortunately. But the thing is, as you said, you understand why people believe in conspiracy theories, because a big chunk of history is based on conspiracies. It's hard not to fall for that. Also, you always kind of, you are unsure what's going on at the top, and that's only natural, and there's a lot of truth to it, and I completely get it. Especially on an economic level, and now there's a lot of stories going on with the because of the vaccines and how the pharmaceutical companies are competing with each other. And what I always think is that there's no doubt that there are people who always will make money when some crisis comes, always, and they will exploit that situation. And despite that, we need to be reasonable and still do the things that science seems to be, telling us to do. It's not always easy. It's not always easy to trust, especially today when we have access to so much information. It's very easy to drown. But yes, we have to look at both sides. And another thing you mentioned, it was the anti-masks protest. Can you comment on masks in general for us?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of issues came out about masks and how some people believe that wearing a mask stopped your oxygen levels from being high, which is not the case. You know, like masks are a real protector, and like I know for a fact in my job, if I didn't have a mask on, then there would be times where I probably would have had COVID-19 long before, you know, I was even vaccinated.
And it's also first of all, it's stopping from spreading, because you have
it stops your droplets. So So droplets are, you know, droplets are dispersed from our mouths when we're speaking, when we're coughing, you know, and they have estimated through research that droplets can travel like less than 2 meters. That's why the 2 meter rule has come into play. So if you stand, you know, 2 meters away from people, but even at that, if you were a bit closer and you still had your mask on, your mask is a really, you know, it's a real added protection.
Also, I was always thinking, okay, and when you look at it probably from a statistic point of view, it's like that. You have a mask, even if this is not the best mask available on market. You have a mask and you sneeze and you have COVID, for instance. And there is, I don't know, 10 people around you at different, you know, how would you say it? Not at the same, not distance. In the same area, like distance. Sorry, thanks. Some of them are closer. Some of them are like 2 meters. Still, if you didn't have that mask on, you would infect, let's say, 10 of them.
Yes.
Because you have that mask on, you will maybe infect 3. Even if it goes through the mask because it's not a good mask. You know what I mean? So that you have to think about it like that. Only seem to be thinking that the mask should be protecting them from you know, it works both ways, but it also but the reasoning behind it is mostly like that. I think something like this.
That's actually interesting. I was thinking about that as well. It's kind of sad how it exposed that type of collective selfishness that exists, because as you said, Aneta, like it's very often it's just about keeping the numbers down, and it has nothing to do with you and whether you will get it or not. It's
protecting the health services. At the moment, because at the moment you might not need it, but you might need it in a week or 2. You know, you have but also the pandemic, as you say, exposed the selfishness, but also it exposed the wonderful side of people like Kelly, people like, I know this is a profession and this is something you have to do, but it's really striking that this you've been there the whole time. I mean, you, for instance, your story shows us that you started working in one of the most difficult times one can imagine. Something to be, I know this is a topic that has been already, you know, widely discussed, but it's never enough to say that how great job you are all doing. Saying that, we're gonna be wrapping up. Kelly, do you want to say something to those who will be listening to us? What's your advice at this stage? What they should do? Just give us a little summary.
I think if people just do what they're doing, you know, wear your mask if you're out in public, you know, keep a good distance from people. If you're offered a vaccination, I would strongly encourage people to avail of that opportunity. You know, and that, you know, this isn't going to be forever. I know we're a year into this now, and it does seem like it's going to go on for another wee while, but you know, I think there's going to be a real quick turn when we're going to turn a corner quite quickly during all this, and we're going to see real improvements, you know, as this vaccination program continues. I mean, when you take people who are vaccinated and then the amount of people who have already had COVID-19, I mean, you know, eventually there'll be no one else left to infect. So that's the hope. So hopefully this virus will just decide, okay, I'm done, and it'll just, you know, disperse into the air and we'll never hear from it again. But hopefully, I just hope everyone, you know, stays safe, and you know, we will see better days.
Yeah, that's very good. We are very thankful that you agreed to join us. We really wanted to talk to you.
No, thank
We're
you for having me.
very excited, and it was a very informative talk. I mean, hopefully in the future we can speak to you again if you have
Yes.
some off. I know you are very busy at work, and we all need you. So hopefully we're gonna chat again. Maybe it will be in bit brighter times. We'll see.
Yes.
Good luck with everything and enjoy
Thank
your
you.
rest. I know you're off just now, so enjoy it.
you.
Kasia?
It was lovely hearing from you, Kelly. And yes, maybe when we'll be getting out of the lockdown, it would be lovely to speak and very informative to speak with you again. Maybe
Yes.
for the listeners, because
Yes.
everybody will be looking for someone who knows what they're talking about to kind of paint the picture a little bit the way you did, in a simple and very accessible way. Because honestly, sometimes I read this stuff online and I don't understand a lot of things that I'm reading, and you kind of spoke about it in a very, as I said, understandable way, and that's very important and very much needed at the moment. So thank you for coming to speak with us. I mean it, Kelly.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly, and have a good day. And
You too.
speak to you soon. Take care.
See
Bye.
you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.